Mm-hmm.
Nice. So we're definitely going to talk about that. We all want to hear about what's in the pipeline. So just to give you a general flow of things of just our discussion today, of course, we're going to start with you. We're going to start with, like, you know, where you're from, where you grew up. And then we'll go into some of your discovery of the arts and your passion therefore, and then your study at SCAD and then beyond. And so we'll take a life
Awesome.
journey through, you know, your beginnings to present day. And we'll talk about some of the creative aspects, like how you create your stories and what your process is like, to, you know, some of the business aspects of, you know, working with publishers and getting your work out there, because obviously both of those are part of it. So.
Yeah, great.
I'm trying to figure out my earphones. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. I prepared some images to show.
Oh, nice. Let me give you screen sharing permissions then.
Okay, great.
There you go. All right, you should have them now. Excellent.
Awesome. Okay. I like the drawing in the background, Jesse.
Oh, yes, the incredible art of my little brother. I'm visiting my family in New Orleans right now, and so
okay.
My brother's about 10, 11 years younger than I am, so he drew that when he was a kid. So
nice. That looks like a masterpiece.
Yeah, you see the scale, right? The proportions of the family portrait. It just they're great.
Is that you, the person with the black shirt on?
Yes, that's me.
Looks really tall.
Right. Yes. That's good. Good. Nice. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. We'll let people trickle in as they make their way in. That'll be great. So yeah, just we want to start with, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Sure. Yeah. Well, hi everyone. I'm Rumi, and I'm from Japan. I was born there, and I partly grew up in Atlanta. When I was little, my mom had to work there for a couple of years, so I guess I grew up in both the U.S. and Japan in a way. But so I started working as a translator. I was really passionate about literature when I was a student. So I did my undergrad and master's degree in comparative literature, focusing on Japanese literature, and I became a full-time translator. But I always wanted to tell stories and do some creative writing. I also loved drawing. I always wanted to do something creative. But I had a stable job in Tokyo, so I wasn't really doing what the creative things. Then in 2011, there was a big earthquake that hit Eastern Japan. And I think it's not just me, but it made everyone think about what they really want to do in life, and maybe make some changes. And so I applied to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, in Georgia. It was also nice because it was like going back to where I partly grew up in. It's like 5-hour drive from Atlanta. I've been there when I was little. It's a beautiful city, Savannah. So yeah, that was 2012 when I went there, and then I graduated in 2014. And in September of that year, I moved to New York City, and I've been working as a freelance illustrator and cartoonist since then.
Nice. And when did you first know that sort of illustrating, creating cartoons, design was your passion? Was it a young age type thing? Were you always like a sketcher and a drawer as a kid, or did it come about a little bit later in life? What was that discovery process?
I was always making comics actually, but I didn't really think much about it. You know, when you're in school, you have art classes, and you make like little zines. Like they make you fold paper and just staple a bunch of paper together, and then tell you to draw just to keep you quiet. I loved making books like that, and I still have them at my mom's house. So yeah, and then when I first thinking seriously about art school, I had to put the portfolio together, and most of the things I was making, it was sequential. I wasn't really sure about the comics format yet. I never took formal art school art classes before. I did like community learning things here and there, but it just came naturally to me because I loved storytelling, and even with pictures I wanted to tell a story. um, so yeah, already in my application portfolio, comics was in there, and then when I went to SCAD, there was a sequential art department, so I could take classes there, although I was in the illustration major.
Mhm.
Um, and then while I was taking the class, I learned how to, um, I learned about different materials of inking. I wasn't using crappy copier paper anymore. I learned to get like real Bristol paper so that I can actually erase things and not mess up the whole paper. So it just, I started building up my story collection slowly. And then a little before I graduated, I participated in MoCCA. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a comics festival in Manhattan,
Mm.
organized by the Society of Illustrators. And it's one of the bigger comics arts festival where you can sell your zines, mini comics, self-published work in general. It's also a great way to meet people in the community. Um, so I started printing my own books for that, and then kept doing from
Nice,
there.
nice. And you spoke a little bit about your portfolio that you submitted to SCAD for admission, which is a question that I definitely want to make sure we a topic I want to make sure we touch upon. How did you choose which pieces or develop the pieces that go into your portfolio, both for submission to or admission to SCAD, but also beyond? Do you still keep a portfolio that you show to clients and you host online?
Mhm.
What's the selection process? How many pieces should go inside your portfolio? You know, and things like that. What do you think? What's
Yeah.
yeah?
I can't remember exactly how many pieces, but I think it was around 20.
Okay.
And it was for the illustration major, so they weren't really, it wasn't really optimized for comics.
Gotcha.
So I think if you were applying for a comics major, maybe they'll ask you to submit like several stories instead of the certain number of images. But for me, it was like around 20 images. So in there were some acrylic paintings in several comics pages. But I heard from my professors afterwards that my comics pages were something that stood out.
Hmm.
And they thought that they wanted to come because of the comics pages that I submitted. They didn't care much about my paintings.
That's so fascinating that, like, you know, when something grabs people, it may not even be the thing that you came to show or
Yeah,
present, but you know, it's one
yeah.
that when
But
it's
I felt that I came to the right place because in Japan I was already printing those on my small computer printer and giving them out for free. I was taking a community art class, and when they had like a show at the end of the season, I would like display my comics, and no one really um, commented on that. Like they didn't really understand. Manga read from the other way,
Mhm, mhm.
but I was already making it like a Western comics that reads from left to right. So people were confused. They didn't know what to think of the pages, like framed, and they look different from the paintings that they're expecting to see. Um, so I knew I really wanted to do this, but I just wasn't in a place where uh, people understood it or like even encouraged me to keep making more. So it was nice to come to SCAD and like meet people who actually encouraged me to keep going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's such a great highlight, just in terms of finding your market, because in one market something may be not really sticking, but in another market it may be doing really well. And I think that applies to finding your reader demographic as well, really honing in on who it is you're looking to serve, their age range, things like that. So you have a specific idea of your readership, especially if you're doing traditional publishing, because they really need to know where your book's going to fit on the shelf.
Mm.
And if they can't see where your book's going to fit on the shelf, it's going to be harder for them to understand how they're going to market you and how this is going to work and make money for everybody. So thank you for bringing that point up, just about like different markets responding differently to the same content, which is really powerful. So the last thing I want to touch upon in terms of your education piece, in terms of your training in the arts, is what do you feel like is your biggest takeaway from SCAD? Like your time there, having professional arts development.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you look back on it as a published graphic novelist and an illustrator, what was your biggest takeaway from that time?
I think I learned a lot at SCAD. Basically every technical thing that I learned at SCAD.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I always had stories I wanted to tell. I think everyone has a story to tell, but for me, I didn't know how to put it on paper. I knew I wanted to draw and use text as well, and so comic form was ideal for me, but I just didn't know how it worked, what materials to use, where to get paper, or where to get professional grade inks and brushes, things like that. And I didn't know anything about perspective. The first drawing class I took at SCAD, they were talking about perspective, and I raised my hand and asked what it was, and they were a little confused that I didn't know about that. But yeah, like little things like that. I learned so much of the technical aspect of making art.
Yeah, the vehicles by which you get your ideas and your inspirations, like out into
Mm-hmm.
a working piece of art and story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those can be super important. And also for everybody who's joining us, if you have a question, please go ahead and type it into the chat. In the last quarter or last third of this segment, we're going to be asking Rumi your questions, anything that comes to mind. So if you have something that you feel like we should have touched upon, or maybe a question was inspired by something Rumi said, please go ahead and type it into the chat, and we will take those questions in the order that they are received in our chat window. So thank you guys for that. And so now I noticed too that you have worked with quite a few corporations in terms of illustrating and graphic design. What's the process of attracting a corporate client? Like, how do you get those clients, like Buzzfeed, like Unilever? Did you just submit a portfolio? Do you have an agent who basically goes out and shops your work for you? Was it a personal connection? How did that come about?
It's all different, but for Buzzfeed, they have a submission page.
Hmm.
So I submitted it through that. For like bigger corporate clients, it was through personal connection.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend at SVA who introduced me to his first client in New York, and that person was like willing to hire new artists. So I got to kind of talk to him and show him my portfolio. I also made a sample piece. They were hiring graphic recording artists. That's like translating with pictures. So you go to a lecture or a live event and you draw, you do live drawing basically there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like visual note taking. There's definitely a performative aspect.
Mhm.
So he was looking for someone who can do that. So I made like a sample graphic recording piece. It wasn't that professional. I just did it on my tiny table with my phone, filming the process, and sent him the picture and the process video, I think. And it wasn't that great, but I think he appreciated the effort and let me come into his office in Manhattan to practice. And he gave me all the markers and the boards and everything that I need to practice. And then eventually I got a real job through them too. Um, yeah, sometimes my friends refer me because they get a call but they can't take that work because they're busy. Yeah, so it depends, but personal connection definitely is important.
Nice. And what do you find is one of the, because that inspires another question. What do you find is one of the best ways to network and build those personal professional connections? What's worked for you? Has it been mainly colleagues or alumni of SCAD? Has it been, joining different groups, illustrator groups, the Society of Illustrators? Have they turned you on to a lot of work? Where are you finding those access points to paid projects or just great opportunities?
Um, I'm not great at networking. So when I go to parties or official networking events, that just doesn't work that well for me. But I just stay eager, and I just also like to meet new friends who are in arts, just to connect and chat. Like this, what we're doing now, I love learning about what people are doing, what people are wondering about, things like that. Not necessarily thinking about whether it leads to work or not. And luckily in New York, there are a ton of illustrators out there, and they're all really nice and friendly. It's a small world. So when you know someone, they kind of introduce you to someone. Um, and we're always kind of looking for work, but also trying to refer each other to clients. So it works kind of um, unofficially like that, I think.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I think, having a community is so important, which is why,
Yeah.
we try to meet here for skills development, for critique, for, just sharing opportunities in the industry of creating children's books, because I do think we learn from each other and we're better together, definitely, professionally and creatively. And so, yeah, I'm so happy to have everybody who's a part of the group be here today, and even for the ones who couldn't make it. Now, I do want to definitely get into NORI and your inspirations for NORI. What inspired that work? How long did it take you to develop that story from concept to completion, or at least to the pitch?
Mhm.
So yeah, talk about that a little bit. Where do those stories come from? Because I know it's a collection.
Yeah, Nori, I used to live with my grandma.
Mhm.
Well, two grandmothers actually. And my both my parents worked full time, so which is kind of rare in Japan. Usually the woman works at, like, stays at home and take care of the house and the kids. I think it's still kind of like that in Japan. It's very difficult for a woman to have a full-time career.
Mhm.
But my mom just wanted to work, and she couldn't find any childcare options when I was born. She already had a full-time job that she loved. And so, yeah, just my grandmother stepped in to take care of me.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of time with my grandmothers, and it I think it's very interesting because you get to hear about old time stories. Like both my grandmas, they were teenagers when during the World War II. So they told me about those stories. Even little things like what my grandma used to dream about. Like she dreamed about becoming a princess. but her version of the princess is like a Japanese princess in kimono. And she told me that she was dreaming in black and white because like TV was black and white, or like the film was black and white, which was really interesting to me. She liked old songs. So I wanted to make a story about a little kid growing up with her grandma. And I had the idea of NORI around 2013. And at first it was gonna be a sad story, like NORI and grandma love each other, but then grandma dies, because that's what grandmothers do. They tend to, you know, they're a lot older than you, so we don't get to spend that much time with them. But I was going nowhere with the sad version of the story, so I just try to make it really fun and adventurous with a lot of different animals. So I can show you some pictures if
Yeah, please.
that's okay.
Yes.
Let me figure out. Okay, I think this is it. Can you see it?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, so this is the first book I made. It's a mini comic printed with Riso print. I think it was 16 pages, a small book that I printed for the first time for NORI. And this was all, actually. I was like, okay, I'm done. I made a book and I'm done. But then NORI kind of stayed with me, and then I made a second book.
Oh, wow.
And then third book. This is the cover. I love wraparound cover, so it shows the front cover and the back cover.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was becoming like a series, and by this time I had 3 chapters that was getting longer and longer, and the next chapter I was planning, the 4th chapter of NORI, it was going to be around 80-90 pages. So I knew I couldn't print it as a mini comic by myself, so that's when I contacted Drawn Quarterly, and luckily they got back to me, and now NORI is a book. So this is the cover of the book that came out last month. It has 6 chapters in it. Some interior pages. This is the first, from the first chapter. So in 3rd chapter, it all has different spot colors. I wanted to give it kind of a vintage feel to it. So yeah, so that's kind of like a timeline of what happened.
Yeah. No.
Oh, and I have some process photos.
Oh, nice.
To show you. So I think, okay, so this page is the finished page in the book. And then this is the pencil sketch of the page. This is the thumbnail. So this is like the first version of that page. You can see NORI crying here in front of the fire department. And it was inspired by this reference photo. It's actually me in front of a red Doraemon. So if you look at the date, it's still there in the book. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, just one more set of process photos.
Yeah.
I don't know why this keeps getting small. Can you still see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. So this is a spread, a 2-page spread from the 4th chapter where NORI goes to Hawaii, and NORI and grandma, they're looking at the volcano. I forget how you call it. Oh, crater, volcano crater. There's lava coming out of it. I actually went to Hawaii for research, and I saw this scene. So I want to show you my process for making this page. So this is the tight pencil drawing. This is the thumbnail. And this is the sketch that I did when I was there with everyone. So that page is based on this sketch that I did on site.
Oh, wow.
And I should have a photo of the scene too. Oh yeah, this is what it looked like.
Wow. How long did it take you to sketch that on site while you were there at the volcano crater?
I think about 10 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, I try to do it quickly because it was hot there.
That's good motivation. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's it for that. I also have several pages from the new story that I'm working on.
Oh, nice. A little preview.
So so I can share it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you want to do questions first or
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to get dive into and Ilya did a great job of noting that in his question as well, which we'll get to as well. But what exactly did you submit to Drawn In Quarterly? Were there other publishers that you were interested in that you had submitted to or you were thinking about submitting to? Why did you pick Drawn In Quarterly of all the publishers? What attracted you to them as maybe the best place, the best home for your work? So I guess the first question is, why did you choose Drawn In Quarterly, and what exactly did you submit to them for consideration?
So I love Draw In Quarterly. I love the books they publish.
Mm-hmm.
They publish comics for adults, and they're kind of focused on like art comics, alternative comics, not like superhero mainstream comics. So I felt like my work fits in nicely with what they offer already. But I just really liked the books they published, so they were kind of my number one publisher. I actually submitted to 3 different publishers, including Draw In Quarterly, just because they were the only publishers accepting submission from authors directly at the time. So that was Fantagraphics and Top Shelf.
Okay, so those were the 3 publishers that you.
Yeah. And I already talked to them at festivals before, and for Top Shelf, I knew that the Chris, the publisher, liked my work.
Mm-hmm.
He even came to SCAD at like an editor's day to give feedback, and I talked to him then too. So I kind of had a good feeling about that. So yeah, initially I just submitted to those 3. And then I was going to look for a literary agent who focuses on graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard back from Draw In Quarterly right away, so I didn't do that, and I was just super happy and worked with them.
Nice,
Yeah.
very nice. And that's such a key, like that's such a pro tip that you just mentioned too, in terms of presenting your work and getting out to these festivals. Even the industry only events, I think those can be really great too. Not only festivals that are, open to the public and public facing, but they have a lot of industry only events, like Book Expo. BookCon is probably the largest book, event in America, the United States. But Book Expo is where the business end of everything happens. So BookCon, you may be able to come meet, your favorite authors. You may be able to meet Dan Brown and Kwame Alexander, and you get to see these people in one place and get your book signed and stuff like that. But Book Expo is where a lot of the publishers are really doing more of the business side of publishing. And so you do get to meet people, like Rumi was saying, when she got to meet the editor at Drawn In Quarterly by being at this festival and also meeting at SCAD, these are prime opportunities to build a personal connection and connect with people who are really, really hard to get in contact with otherwise. I mean, if you've ever tried to get in touch with even an associate editor at a significant publishing house, it's upstream because they have so many people vying for their attention, right? So when you get a chance to just show your work and shake somebody's hand and maybe give them something, that's a big impression. a big advantage in the market. So definitely get out there to your festivals, get out there to your conferences, of course, when things resume, and get in front of people, because that's still invaluable, So I'm so glad that you shared that for sure. Yeah, and so I do want to know what you're working on next, and then we'll go into the questions that we have in the chat. And again, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Rumi, just go ahead and drop it into the chat, and we'll get to that shortly. But yeah, you can share what you're up to next, because that was going to be my very last question. What are you working on?
Okay. So can I share the screen again?
Yeah. Oh, do you have permissions?
Y-
Yeah, you should.
yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm not sure about permissions, but I don't think
Yeah.
it'll be a problem.
Oh, no.
Oh.
I mean, screen sharing. Are you able to screen?
I think so.
Okay.
It's like it's green now.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. All right.
Okay. So I'm working on a second book with John Quarterly, and it'll be a collection of short stories. Well, Nori was kind of a collection of short stories too, but these are really standalone stories of different characters, different settings. And this is the newest one that I finished. And it's about two college students who are taking a Japanese literature class at NYU. And they're failing the class. They're kind of nerdy, and they love Japanese literature, but for some reason they're failing it, and they have to do this extra credit work, which is to write an original no play and submit it to a school-wide competition. So this is Stephen in the first panel, and he spots Tammy, his classmate, across the street in Brooklyn, and this is where they decide to go do a field research together on Newtown Creek. And Newtown Creek is basically a man-made river slash sewer. And it's one of the most polluted waters in the world. It's stinky. You shouldn't fish there or eat anything. Definitely not touch the water because it's so polluted. Centuries worth of chemicals there. But they, so it's about that Newtown Creek, but it's also about accidental friendships between these two young people. So here they're just starting to walk. And these are train tracks that are still in use in Brooklyn. They're industrial trains carrying chemicals. They're just walking. Tammy is really spontaneous, so she wants to go check out the bridge over there. Steven's more careful, maybe a little shy. But yeah, so they just start walking together. Their basic goal is to create a no play together, but they talk about their childhood too. Steven used to keep Yu-Gi-Oh cards in a Ziploc bag, so he talks about that. They come to this outlook. It's really beautiful. You know that it's so polluted and disgusting, but it's a beautiful, it has some beautiful views along the way. And then this is where Stephen, the narrator, is explaining what no play is. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a traditional Japanese theater that was perfected in the medieval times. So Stephen is explaining all that and like what kind of characters they need to create. Tammy here is saying that we need to have a profound understanding of this place if we want to write a no play about it, like to the point where we understand the poetry of copper and rubber and cadmium. So, okay, so that's it. But that's what I'm working on
Oh, nice.
right now.
Nice. And I
Yes.
have to say, I'm about 70 pages into NORI, and it
Oh,
is
yay.
amazing. Thank you so much for sending me the copy and writing the note.
Oh, thank you.
I have the poster and everything set up. Yeah, I'm about 70 pages in, and your use of humor is so incredible. Like it's such like the humor is so sharp and so punchy and so funny that I literally laugh out loud maybe every few pages that
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I was hoping it'll be funny, but
yeah, it's
I
super
never
cool.
know until, someone tells me that it was funny. So
Yeah, and like
yeah.
unexpected humor, and it just hits you, and I really enjoy
Yeah.
that, and I love the way you do your spot illustrations. Thank you for explaining that you do different spots for the different chapters, standalone stories. I think that's really clever as well. But yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and showing us this. We're gonna get into the question segment now,
All right. Thanks
so that
for
everybody gets a chance to
asking.
ask their question. So, first up, since we only have a handful here right now, I'm gonna just have people go ahead and ask their questions direct.
Okay.
Usually I read them off, but I think we can ask direct. So, Rev, you're up first. If you want to go ahead and ask your question about portfolio submission.
Hi. Yeah, so my question is, when you are submitting anything for a portfolio, do you ever tailor your portfolio for specific places or companies? Like, do you ever like draw new material that so it fits, or do you submit the artwork that you already have?
I definitely tailor my portfolio. I keep it concise. And sometimes if I think it's worth it, I create a new piece, like I was saying about the graphic recording piece. I knew the person was eager to hire a new person, and he met me face to face. He kind of know me already, so I thought that it was just the question of whether I can actually do it or not. So just wanted to prove to him that I'm really eager to learn, and I can learn quickly. I can actually do this. So yeah, but other times I try to find a client that might already like the work that I already have. But yeah, I definitely tailor the portfolio. If it's a magazine art director, I would tailor it to like an editorial art. If it's like a more like a book publishing person, I might send them different things. So yeah.
Nice.
I like your photo, by the way.
Thank you.
Rev's a great artist. He's a really, really great artist. I'm like so many people in the group. All right, Iliad, your question's up next. I'm gonna go ahead and mute yourself. And
Yeah, I'd like to know how you go about submitting your idea to a publisher if you've never really met them. Is it you pitch a rough idea or a
Mhm.
completed idea with completed art?
um, I think it depends on the publisher, but I think most people would like to see at least some finished pages. So I try to have um, at least one or two chapters finished, or if it's a short story collection, one or two stories finished. Um, Top
I,
Shelf, I think they're known for not signing a contract until they see like a fully finished book. But most other publishers, I think they're open to signing with you before you have everything finished.
I have a follow-up question regarding
Sure.
the use of agents. Is, I know Jesse's been talking about in children's books, that's a
Mhm.
very helpful thing to have. But in graphic novels, comics, it's maybe a little different. Do you recommend having an agent pursue or seek out publishers for your work first? Or once you've kind of gotten your feet wet, getting into an agent later?
I think it'll work either way. It just happened for me. I just submit it to the publisher directly, and that worked out. But only a handful of publishers accept submission from artists directly, or authors. So it might be better to pursue an agent. Also, they can possibly negotiate like a higher fee for you, because they know the market. But I think it really depends. I think I have a great relationship with my publishers. I met another publisher at a festival last year, and I'm working on a children's graphic novel with them. And I just met them at the festival and then went to their office, talked about it, and took it from there. Yeah, and those two things right now are keeping me busy. But maybe in the future, I can get a fancy agent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice. Those are very good questions. And yeah, that's always like the double-edged sword with agents, right? It's like the whole point of an agent is to get you work and to get your work out there and to connect you with the people who are making the purchasing decisions at the publishing houses. But if you already are working with those publishing houses and you already have work coming in, then the benefit then would be if you have many more projects that you want to shop and you just want somebody whose job is just to pitch your work, just to be out there sort of selling your stuff to the right homes and bring you back offers and, you know, things like that. And so yeah, I totally understand that sort of situation where, you know, the ball's already rolling, and that would kind of be the function of the agent, would be to get the ball rolling and keep it rolling in terms of paid projects.
Right, right.
But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Cameron, you had a question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know.
Sure. Hi, Rumi.
Hi.
Real quick, wanted to know, you know, when it comes to making comics and like the whole process, like from conception to art to everything, what has been the lesson you've learned or the piece of advice you picked up along the way that you wish every like person looking to make comics knew, that would just either help them be easier, like a little life hack or something that you were like, if everyone knew this, it would save so much time or whatever, and if there is anything like that?
It might not be applicable to everybody, but the best thing I did was starting using a brush. Before that, I just didn't know how to ink, so I was just using random pens. Realizing that what I can do with a brush and ink, I think that just really changed my artwork, and how people react to my work and how it stands out. So maybe like finding your tool, because if you make something and you're happy making it, I think it will show, and people will be naturally attracted to it. But like you have to have fun and you have to be satisfied with what you're drawing. And I think before starting to use a brush, I wasn't there. So that was a big moment for me.
Yeah, no, process definitely makes a huge difference. Huge difference. Thank you for that. Great question, Cam.
Yeah.
Wei, you had a question. Go ahead, unmute yourself. Let us know.
Hi, Rumi. I think
Hi.
you started to answer my question.
Right,
Savannah,
yeah.
the use of pen, pencil, do you use watercolor? Or do you have a pencil sketch before you actually put down the ink? Because I don't see any marks of eraser on your picture.
Oh, right. Yeah, good question. So I used to draw with a pencil and then ink or paint, but then I have to erase the pencil lines. I thought that was time consuming, so I started just refining the sketches on the computer in Photoshop and then printing them out and then putting it on the light box and tracing them. So basically there's I get the good paper and then tape the sketch on the back and then put it on the light box. And then just ink straight from there. So there's nothing to erase at the end. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you using watercolor to get the color on it?
Yeah, so I use watercolor too, but I do the same thing with watercolors. But sometimes I want to use thicker paper. And when that happens, I use red tracing paper or carbon paper. Because I feel like if it's red, I don't really have to erase it. It looks like part of the painting. So I use the red carbon paper. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice. This is such a good question. Such a good question about process. All right, and Rev, I see you had one more question down here about the NORI book. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my second question was just basically your turnaround. Like, I'm thinking, how long does it take you from like the planning process all the way up to the actual, like, you drawing it and then painting it? How long does it usually take you to create your own work of art, your own book? So like starting like with the NORI book, like how long did it take you when you first started making an NORI book, and then how long is it taking you now to make your new book? Is it faster now, or does it take about the same amount of time?
Yeah, it's definitely faster now because I started NORI in 2013. That's when I started sketching and then and writing. And now it's 2020. So, well, I actually finished everything last year. So I think it took 6 years to finish the whole book. But my second book, I started, I think, the middle of last year, and I'm hoping to finish it at the end of this year or early next year. So it's definitely getting faster. I know how many pages I can sketch or ink in a day, so I can plan it better. The most time consuming part is writing and doing research. So that's the painful part. I usually take a lot of naps when I'm writing, or take a walk. So I kind of play the scene in my head, and then when I'm happy with the scene I'm seeing in my head, I start drawing. So until I have that scene, or like I can see it in my head, I can't do anything. So I just look like I'm like dead or taking a nap, but I'm actually hard at work. So that takes a few weeks to a few months. But after that, I can do pencil sketches, like maybe 2 to 3 pages a day, and then I can ink 2 to 3 pages a day too. So after that, it goes pretty quickly.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. And so we definitely want to thank you for your time, Rumi, and sharing your expertise and your wisdom. As I just dropped into the chat, we usually like to give a little gift or honorarium to any guest that we have on. So you can Venmo or Square or PayPal, anything that you feel or is possible. And then I'll add my donation to it, and we'll go ahead and push it over to Rumi, just as a thank you for
Oh, wow.
insights. Oh yeah, because I think one of the most valuable tools for our learning and development is to hear from other people and our peers and people who are doing things in different realms and get that real-time feedback on how they are navigating, what they're learning, what their process is like. And so that's really, really key. And that's not really something you can just look up on the internet. You really have to talk to somebody who's doing the work and who is a part of the industry and who's knowing the business. So it's really invaluable. And so, we like to say thank you for sure. And the very last thing, Rumi, can you please let us know where we can buy your work, follow your work? Give us your info.
Oh, yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I also just opened a affiliate account from at bookshop.org where you can get a copy of NORI if you like. So I can maybe share it here in chat. Just a second.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice.
So yeah, I like bookshop.org because they support independent bookstores. So if you want to check out, there are a lot of other comics on there too. They're like Amazon, but that are for bookstores. So I like them.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know this may be getting you in a bit of trouble, but do you have any more personal copies on hand if people want to buy directly from you and maybe get a signed copy of NORI?
Oh, I have just a few left. I think I have one or two.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone's interested, yeah, please let me know. I'd be happy to sign it and mail it to you.
Yeah.
So
It was
yes.
totally worth it. She drew a little drawing in mine and a little illustration, and I wouldn't trade it.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
That's great.
Thanks so much, Jesse, for
Yeah.
hosting this. It was so much fun to talk about comics.
Yeah, of
Everyone.
course. No, thank you. Thank you so much for giving your time and your energy, your wisdom, your expertise. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions. As always, so illuminating. I learned so much from you guys every single time. I am still setting up. Obviously, next weekend is the 4th, but I'm still setting up what our very next event will be. I'm looking at having a purchasing librarian come in and talk to us about what the process is like for getting your books into libraries, because they do order in bulk. And there are over 100,000 libraries in the USA alone. And so this is a huge, huge buyer that a lot of people, that gets overlooked, but they're always buying books. They have to buy books. The question is, can you get your book on their radar for consideration? And, whether you're independent or traditionally published, this is obviously going to help your sales and your royalties a ton. So we'll talk about that. I'll see if I can get, Mark over from Open Public Library to come talk to us about that. But thank you guys so much for everything. I'll keep you posted on new events. And thank you so much, Rumi, for being here. It was just amazing.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you guys.
Oh, how do I?